Hello, ladies and gents, boys and girls from beautiful Sudbury, Ontario, home of the Blueberry Bulldogs and your Sudbury Wolves. Here we are on this beautiful Tuesday. I'm ready to head in and chip away at Shoresy 5, be Ted Hitchcock for the afternoon. As Ted says, could be worse. By the way, Jimmy in Lethbridge, Alberta, who asked if there was any Newfoundlanders that won a Stanley Cup. I will say this. Daniel Cleary, Michael Ryder, Alex Newhook in that order. Didn't whenever Cleary won it was 7 or 8, 2007 or 2008 with the Red Wings. Shortly after, I believe it was 2010, Michael Ryder won one. And then just a few years ago, my buddy, well, they're all my buddies, but Alex Newhook. I talk about power conditioning, Ryan power conditioning on this podcast quite a bit at the end. I always give my buddy a plug because he does a great job. He did a great job with myself, and he's training my daughter now and a lot of friends and young prospects and more than one sport. Well, Alex Newhook's one of those guys. So I got to know Alex a few years ago. Now, God, I remember skating with Alex. I remember watching Alex when he was 12, 13, just knowing. I believe he left at 14, as did I, as did Cleary. I think I might have mentioned it on here before, but I'll never forget when I went to Quesnel, BC. A lot of you know that story now. As a 14-year-old, just started playing junior. And there was some eyes on me that, again, at home, we won, and I did really well, obviously, and or I wouldn't have been asked to go away. But, it was always lost on me. Like, we had a defeatist attitude in Newfoundland at the time. We're a smaller province. We don't have many professional athletes. NHL seemed like such a fantastical, mythical dream that it just didn't seem real. So when I first got out there, this was all, I was the kid who came in and clearly I was a prospect, but I certainly didn't exude that confidence. I'll tell you that. And so I couldn't believe when Mike Barnett, Wayne Gretzky's agent, came to Quesnel and knocked on the door, and I knew what he looked like. Back then, there was less social media. Well, there was no social media, less outlets on TV and everything else. But so you would think and getting less of pretty much everything when it came to TV screens, usually would mean you saw less of it and there weren't as many opportunities. But a guy like Wayne Gretzky was he was almost like a superhero. So, any major athlete, but, we play hockey and it was Wayne Gretzky. So his agent was Mike Barnett, and Mike had done so many interviews. And, I remember TSN, like or around the clock sports just became a thing. MTV brought in here in Canada much music, or at least opened the door for that, right? And that was the first I remember, like, round the clock anything, and it was round the clock music. Then it was sports, then the Weather Channel, then channels started to be dedicated to one particular thing. Well, I remember, so these channels all had to create content somehow. And I just remember seeing so many interviews on like Wayne Gretzky and Mario Lemieux and Mark Messier. Oh God, players like Brett Hull who loved the camera. Like he just Jeremy Roenick. These guys, like, they were born for that media era, right? And so even before social media, there was still a growth in screens and media coverage and everything, right? I mean, it was the birth of the sports bar kind of thing. I'm sure in the 70s you could go in and watch a game on TV, but their definition of a sports bar is a lot different. Now, probably one I'd hang out at, but you know what I mean? Like, but as the 80s progressed and towards the end of the 80s and then definitely mid 90s, places like Boston Pizza, for example, Boston Pizza, you don't think of sports or TVs when you think of that, but they started to have, 20 giant screens just behind the bar. And, Don Cherry's here in Canada became an outlet, became a restaurant chain. And if you don't know who I'm talking about, Don Cherry was a commentator for years on CBC, I guess towards the end, sports, not just all over Canadian everything, and very popular with his opinions. But I guess, of course, you could say divisive, polarizing, but he was a proud Canadian, and Canadians would identify, and I guess he was part of the stereotype that is Canada. I don't mean all his opinions, because that can get divisive too, although, I don't know that I would have fired him for what he said I think he got fired a few years ago for saying "you people," and he was preaching to people that weren't patriotic, and I think it got taken as if he was talking to minorities. Maybe he was talking to immigrants that didn't show patriotism. I'm not really sure. I know Grapes is, and we call him Grapes. Grapes is really good to me. Always has been. Made sure when I was up in the NHL to get me on for the Hockey Night in Canada interview, and he and Ron McLean. And listen, people are down on Ron, but these guys were friends for a long time, right? And there's more good than bad. I didn't ever ask Ron or Don. I didn't grill them. I know Ron better as time progressed, basically because Don's older and does his thing now. Last time I saw him was on Wolf Island, where he had a place for years off of Kingston, where he's from. Like I said, Don Cherry was always great to me. So was Rockin' Ron McLean. There's more to it than just he said, she said of the moment a bunch of years ago. Right? These guys had a quarter century, year-long relationship. Anyway, what am I getting at? Oh, Jesus. So anyway, fucking TSN and then well, I mean, I say Sportsnet, but there wasn't there the Score? That's probably still one. In the United States, there's let's just say ESPN Classic, whatever it is. There's round the clock coverage. So before you would turn to your smartphone for that, it was pretty new thing. It was toss on a TV. You want to see a game in any sport? Hey, let's go to Don Cherry's. We'll throw on hockey playoffs and opening day baseball. Yeah, let's watch both at once. You know what I mean? And you know what? Jerry wants to go with us, and they're going to do the preview of NFL and NBA playoffs. Yeah, we'll watch that as well. Right? That started to be a thing. So with that, teams, leagues, sports channels saturated the market with their biggest, baddest, best representatives, which would be Michael Jordan, Wayne Gretzky, Troy Aikman. Why did I go right to Troy Aikman? I don't know. Basketball for sure would be. Anyway, what did I leave out? Oh, baseball at the time. God, it started to be Barry. That'll tell a story, the baseball story. I mean, Barry Bonds, Mark McGwire, for example, late 80s are fucking unbelievable players anyway. Bonds, I think, was MVP. Now they went on and they ushered in the steroid era. I guess they didn't really usher it in, but they best represented it. Now, whether you're for or against, there was, that home run chase was crazy. Whether you think they should be in the Hall of Fame or not my point. My point is things like that started to happen, and TVs started to be, especially then the birth of the flat screen or even the smaller screen. The flat screen is one thing, but at first, I remember early in my life when, my friends, I never had a big screen until I was fucking 12 or 13, or what you would consider now as a big screen. Everybody has one. But back then, man, they were fucking big and they were heavy. And it was almost inconvenient to have one. So they really changed. And, these, places, bars, restaurants that would have 50 sometimes, like, it just was never a thing before that. So people like Wayne Gretzky's dad, Walter, Mike Barnett, right? Like these people started. Don Cherry, even Don Cherry, he owned. Well, now what I'm aware of, he had this segment, hockey in Canada had Coach's Corner. Between the first and second period, Ron McLean and Don Cherry. He would analyze the game and point things out. The famous things would be that were really divisive would be like visor or no visor. Now everybody has one. I hated wearing one. I never wore one. But Don Cherry would think, people with the visors are chirping and then they're hiding behind the visor. That was his thing, right? So this guy's pretty right wing and everything. He's on that side, but he's big into the military and I never saw him as divisive. And like I said, I'm in the center somewhere. I get how he offended some people, but doesn't everybody? Anyway, offended at something. I didn't take his comment. I'm getting too far into the Don Cherry side of this, but I never did take his comment as ignorant or Hitcham speaking to immigrants when he was saying that. I thought he was implying anybody that wasn't patriotic should give their head a shake. Anyway, look into it. But anyway, before that, big into he's a big religious guy, and I commend him for all this. I'm not, like I said before. So, like I said, we don't see absolutely eye to eye on everything, but he's a very 90% of who I am. I think would probably parallel Don Cherry's inner self. Like he's loyal to his buddies. He loves the game of hockey, obviously, but there's a certain way to play the game of hockey, and it's not just with fists, like he says, but it's to be a leader and show up with a suit on and set a good example and, be a teammate is one of the most important things you can do in life. He was very, very good to his wife, to his loved ones. He's big into honoring veterans. So am I. It's big in my family. My more than one relative, but my grandfather, Bill Bucky Norris, like I've often said to you or to you people, to you guys, he was on the HMS Bulldog, which changed the course of the war. So where am I going with all this? But that was then they call him Grapes. Okay, yeah. So he would have hockey night in Canada, and he also might talk about Russians. I remember and Europeans at first, like they were kind of the enemy, but the Cold War was happening, right? The Cold War was fucking happening in the 70s and 80s, and he came out of the 60s, 70s, 80s. He's a tough coach. He was a very patriotic guy. So, when he first Europeans came over, I mean, he welcomed it. It was tongue in cheek, but he would call them Euros. He would like really kind of speak out against them. He was clearly being biased towards Canada, for Canada. But again, we loved it. And everybody could see that. People got upset, always, I guess, thinking that he was being mean or polarizing. I just saw him as this huge Captain Canada figure. What did you expect? Like people, you can't always, you're going to offend some people. Colorful language has turned into something of a crime, and I hate that. And I've often, as a Canadian here, and I tell you, it's an odd time. I don't bring up politics much on here, and I really am. I see a lot from both sides of it. I really have never and still don't hold it against people. We're on set here now, man. There's all kinds of people that are right or left. I don't see really far right and far left to me as a problem. But I get it. I voted all different ways in my life because I don't think anybody should stay static with the party. You don't know what they're going to think or do, or I'm there. So to me, Don Cherry's a fucking hero, right? Like, and I never took anything he said, at least when it came to metaphors and his wordplay, when it came to Russians or Finns or whatever. I didn't. It became tongue in cheek. I took it with a grain of salt. And anyway, but the whole point is that like he was really that was his thing. And then he had a show called The Grapevine, and he would have it out of a bar somewhere, I assume in Toronto somewhere. I think it was Mississauga. And he would have, I remember when Eric Lindros went on. Eric Lindros was 17 or 16, 17, 18, coming up through the O. And he had him on there. And that was the first person I saw, like, of now Eric Lindros is 6 or 7 years older than me, but that was the first person I saw that represented like my era of junior hockey player go on there. He would have like Jerry Cheevers and Phil Esposito, but they would talk about hockey in there. But I only found out about that through, and I believe that was like it was on like once a week or every 2 weeks or something for a half hour on like one of the local channels accessed it. I don't remember that being as big as any of the other shows, but that so you would see him. Don Cherry's Rock'em Sock'em, and that was his side video series, which was always a treat at Christmas. Guys like Wayne Gretzky had like Hockey My Way. It was a video to his ways to go about the game from beginner to expert or whatever. And then I don't know, fucking Bo Jackson had Serial, and I know that all happens now, but at the time, without the reliance on advertising from social media, there was a boom in seeing these people outside of their regular, like in Don Cherry's case, Hockey Night in Canada. For example, say an agent is probably very vocal on Twitter, and you hear about them all the time. I forget the guy's name now, but Juan Soto, Jesus, baseball. I forget the guy's name, and I don't even need to really look. In hockey at the time, for me, it was Don Meehan, Larry Kelly. There was a bunch. Mine was Mike Barnett of IMG, International Management Group. That's actually what the movie Jerry Maguire was based on, IMG. So, and Mike would go on and do, all kinds of interviews on the game. And, you'd see magazines of him and Wayne Gretzky hanging out. So I knew what Mike Barnett fucking looked like. Now I don't think you would probably know all the agents, even though they're more vocal on Twitter. Like I said back then, I knew what he looked like, and he showed up at my fucking door in Quesnel. Man, just seems like 500 years ago. Yeah, he said, "Hey, you must be Terry," and I went, "You must be Wayne Gretzky's agent." I think I forgot his name, but like I said, I knew him by face. And then my dad came out, Mike Barnett, Mike Barnett. And my dad didn't know what to do. And the first thing he said was, if you think Terry's good, you got to get to Harbor Grace, Newfoundland, and watch Danny Cleary. And I don't think he meant that I was the way it came off. Like if it was a one-off, if he was only picking one player, it came out, you know what, you're in the wrong place, go get Danny. But I know what my dad was saying was like, and he was a bit starstruck, and he didn't expect it. A lot was happening, man. A lot was happening. Just a few months before I'm in Newfoundland, fucking Mary Queen of the World. I'm grade school, grade 8, fucking bopping around. Like I said, I don't know, going through winning a Pee Wee championship and egging houses and playing Nintendo. And a few months later, like all of this, I mean, fucking Quesnel playing for the junior team, just got in a fight, fucking rubbed hot sauce in a guy's face, lost my virginity, fucking, talk now all of a sudden going into major junior. I'm going to get drafted in just a few months by one of these teams who's calling me every day. I mean, it was a fucking crazy time. Dad was, I remember him coming out and he was blown away. Didn't know what to do. Man, it seems like such a long time ago. Well, because it is a long time ago. Anyway, well, I don't even know where I was going with that, but you got yourself a decent story out of it. One that didn't begin or didn't end. It was just words. Oh yeah, fuck. Because I was answering that question. So Cleary and then Rides came from Bonavista. If there's one thing that I feel that I can contribute into Newfoundland hockey history, I mean, I didn't play as long as I wanted to. Obviously, I didn't put up stats in the show that, they're just a blink of an eye. But, and I've often said, I did skate out there with my jersey on and Montreal Canadiens. Got in a couple of dandy tilts. Was their minor league rookie of the year and scored a lot down there. So I have good memories. I know that would sound twisted coming from your particular angle or a lot of you people listening to this. But looking back, and especially as I sit here and I'm about to go in now and I got some lines to remember, and put on a different face, my acting face, which is very much the same face. Well, it's the same face and the point of view. I mean, yeah, I'm acting. I'm playing hockey player, man. And all of that stuff before led to all this. So really that is my point of view. But what the lasting effect of it is that, before me in the 80s, there was nobody. My dad was my dad's group 5 off my dad's Bantam team. Jim Munch, my dad, Donnie House, Terry French, and Tony White. They all went and played professionally. Tony White had 30 goals for Washington Capitals in the 70s. There was other greats from Newfoundland. My dad had that big year with the Minnesota Fighting Saints, senior, as most of you know, set the record, which remained a record. The league folded, so I guess it's still a record. 6 shorthanded goals in a season, and was drafted to the NHL as well, to the Minnesota North Stars. Alec Faulkner, the first Newfoundlander to played for the Detroit Red Wings. You had people, you had very important hockey figures in Newfoundland. I don't want to leave anybody out. There was Doug Grant. I nearly forgot Doug Grant. Bob Gladney, I believe. There was a couple in the 70s, a few, but not many. In the 80s, I don't know. I know Darryl Williams played 1 game. I think that was in the 90s, though. Darryl went away to play junior. He's from Mount Pearl, the late 80s. So there weren't that many players. And there was a guy named John Slaney. And I'm talking to Canadian hockey fans. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Scored the winner for Canada in the World Juniors back when it was a different format. It was the first exciting World Juniors I ever remember seeing because it didn't used to be a championship game. But this year it happened to come down to Canada-Russia for the last game. We needed to win. And John scored, a defenseman who ended up going 9th overall. and was our highest Newfoundland pick ever until I came along, of course. Number 8. There you go, baby. Just again, John played 250 odd games in the NHL. I'm kidding when I joke at that, but like it or hate it, I am the highest pick from Newfoundland. But what I'm saying here is that John went 9th. Now John had to win and go. I remember they won the Newfoundland, and he went, I think, to the SO Cup. It was called Bantam thing, in Toronto, and he got scouted there. There was no scouts coming to Newfoundland. Same thing when I had to leave and go to the Quebec Pee Wee tournament and then get asked to go. Right. And what happened when my dad ran into, like I just said, Mike Barnett? You got to go see Danny Cleary. Where was Danny? A few months later, Danny is up in playing in Ontario, Junior B. I think it was Trenton, just getting ready to play for the Belleville Bulls. Harold Druken came right after that, right? So people started to go up. Slaney went 9th overall. Terry went 8th. And then now Cleary goes 13th. And now Harold Druken the next year goes 31st. What's going on here, right? What's going on? If the only players to come out of there are going in the first round and shit, there must be other players. So that led to like guys like, I think Michael Ryder went to the 6th round and became you could argue our best. All those guys I mentioned, they ended up going on to great careers. But Rides went the 6th round. Ryan Clough, I think 6th round. Adam Pardy, right now, start looking now. Clark Bishop was actually playing now as well. All kinds. My age, Jeff Loader ended up going away to the Quebec League, and then boom, goes in the 10th round. Mike Pittman goes in the 9th round. These guys didn't play in the NHL, just giving you an example. Guys like Ryder probably wouldn't have been noticed, right? Because so my thing is, I'm happy to be part of the group that led to Newfoundland being discovered and respected as a hockey province there. So no matter whatever happens, you could argue about me and my lack of whatever, or my overratedness, or whatever it is. You could say whatever you want. But you can't deny that me and the group I came in with, and my dad largely taking that team away. My dad took a team away way back in the day, and the Geo All-Stars right before Quesnel. I'd agreed to go to Quesnel. I played a tournament with them in Vancouver. And it was the first AAA adventure that Newfoundland had ever gone to, at least that far. Might have put a team together to play like in Halifax or something, but we never had a Bantam AAA provincial-wide all-star team go away. And so, and that also, Kurt Walsh went the 3rd round, one of my really good buddies, played on that team. It started to open the door for a lot of other people. And by that, I'm just talking NHL, but it got more Newfoundlanders off the rock, man. A free schooling when you leave and you go to play hockey, whatever it is. A lot of kids, if you're listening to this now, that should be the goal. How am I going to, make myself a better person? And hopefully, if school's not your thing, it's not. But if it is, then use hockey as a fucking tool to get a free schooling, just like my dad did, and indirectly how I did, because it pays off in the end. And the NHL is, for most people, a far off fantasy that doesn't end up happening. Not to discourage you, but pro hockey's all over. Hey, you want to play? You want to see the world? No, have it as a fucking goal. Stranger things have happened. Clark Bishop just got back up. I just mentioned Clark with Calgary this year. Does that guy plug away, man? He's got some serious NHL time now. He got up there, and each year he gets a few more games played. I think now he's got 50 or 60 games played. Hard work and a great player growing up and everything, but just real hard work. So I'm not saying don't work towards that goal, but on the way, there's all kinds of great successes and goals and dreams that can be achieved. And for me, man, get that schooling and get traveling. There's a whole wide world to see of hockey with professional leagues all over the place, and you can go carve a living, meet a future wife, make friends for life, whatever you're going to do. And you know what? There's some girls that are on their way to the PWHL. Same thing other way around. Your world is just expanding. It's the smallest it's going to be. The PWHL is going to take off. It's going to add teams. It's going to add players from all over the world. Same fucking thing. Go do your take advantage of the opportunity wherever you are, whoever you are. And outside of that, if you're downtown St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador, and you want to go to George Street, you want to have a good time, why not drop into Trinity Pub? Why not drop into TJ's, Rob Roy Confusion, the Martini Bar, Green Sleeves, of course, the Bull and Barrel. If you're going to go for a bite to eat, try out the Loose Tie, Blue on Water, of course, Wedgwood Cafe. Also do catering. You want to work out, you want strength and balance for the body and for the mind, go to Ryan Power Conditioning. Speaking of Ryan, earlier in the pod, yeah, check it out. He's great. Pitbull Pain Relief, the pain sticks just don't quit. Go to pitbullpainrelief.com, see what all the fuss is about. And of course, Mr. Lube, there's 2 locations. St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador. One's on Torbay Road, one's on Cammount Road. Live, laugh, lube. Crown Cabinets, check it out. Muggsy Jeans, I loves me Muggsy Jeans. Buys, be back just a couple of days. More Tales with Tier. Thanks. True Hockey. Nearly forgot. True Hockey, take what's yours. See you guys soon.